Well, welcome to the podcast, everybody. We're here with Gary Ricci in what do we call it? Ignite One-on-One.
It's so good to be on the show, Steve. I
appreciate that.
Longed for this moment my entire day.
Nice. Well, thank you. So before I jump too much further, you do also have a successful podcast. So why don't you...
I mean, successful is a word we throw around lightly. But yeah, my daughter and I do a show called What's for Lunch and Other Spiritual Questions, which we release every Friday. And we talk about the big questions of God. We talk about sandwiches of the week, things that have happened to me today, and various and other sundry important topics to our numerous listeners, or the same lady who listens over and over again.
Yeah. How many? Let's see. How many episodes do you have? Because I think I've listened to at least half of them. So having said that,
I think we probably 26? Have 25 or so. Okay, so I used to do a radio show called What's for Lunch and Other Spiritual Questions for about 5 years, and so then we've reconfigured it as a podcast. We did a little version of this over COVID. We would do some Facebook Lives that were in the same vein. You know, when you're a church, I'm a pastor of a church, and during COVID, you just find creative ways to communicate and connect with people. And I missed doing the radio show. I missed the interaction of it. I like to just talk about random things. I think everything connects to God.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter where we start. If there is a creator God of the universe, that anything that comes out of that creation eventually comes back to him. Doesn't matter how silly you start or how weird it is or interaction. There's always something that connects back to God, our relationship with him, our purpose, our mission in the world. And so I love kind of discovering all those little connections.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. I like it. All right. What should we know about you? I have a little list of questions here because I get a little intimidated when I'm sitting in front of you because you're a master talker.
I'm a master talker.
Yeah.
I do talk a lot. I do talk for a living.
Gift. It's one of your gifts.
And I can blab about almost anything.
Yeah.
What should you know about me?
Yeah. What should we know about you?
I mean, I think the most important thing about me is my relationship with God. I did not grow up in the church. Did not think God was interested in my life. Went through a lot of hardship as a kid. Primarily, I lost my mother when I was 9 years old. Was someone who did not consider Christianity something that cool people did, and had no interest in knowing more about it. But God was interested in me and called me into relationship with him. He lured me in with free pizza. And I first heard about a God that loved me and wanted to know me and responded to that. And it changed my whole life. Mm-hmm. And I became someone who found new mission and purpose. And so my life has been focused from that point on telling other people about Jesus, trying to live the way that Jesus did. And often that means I am a guy who shows up with some kind of free food and says, let's talk about Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Because it worked on you.
Yeah, I'm a married guy. I've been married for 29 years to the fabulous Elizabeth Ricci. We have 4 kids that are 24, 23, 20, and 18. We are almost empty nesters. My last one just graduated high school, and they are the joy of my life, along with my son-in-law. And so our little group is probably my favorite group of people in the world. If you said, what's my favorite place to be? It's probably around the table at our house when everybody's there. And I like when other people are there also, when people are gathered around the table at our house and we're grilling out or around the fire. I love people. I like to be with people. I'm interested in people's lives and jobs and situations. And so I'm kind of endlessly fascinated walking around in the world. I always think you could have a ministry of just walking around. Like I could just go to Aldi and see who's there. You know, whether it's people I know or people that I want to get to know, I'm interested in people. So I don't know. I think that's probably what's true about me. I have various interests, and I love to read. I play golf. I swim. I'm kind of a sports guy. I'm excited because my Knicks are in the playoffs, and they're on tonight. So I kind of have a zest for life, I suppose. I've been a pastor for 25 years and planted a church called New Hope in Round Lake Heights, where probably the most important person who goes there is a guy named Steve Nielsen, who brings a lot of pizzazz. So one of our great youth leaders and is a fantastic usher and kind of lends his creative talents to different events that we do, and wears the tight shirts that show others that you don't have to worry if you look good in something. You can just, I'm a big fan of Steve's. Although I think you're a great example. When I first met you, I was like, ugh. Mm-hmm. And then grew to just love you and appreciate you, and to see Jesus come out in your life has been a great joy for me. And And I remember we had a couple of hard conversations when you started coming.
Yes, we did.
And then I watched you kind of transform into someone who especially loves people well, is interested in their development, especially our young people. And you've gotten your fingers and mind and joy into a lot of things at New Hope. And you've been around our table a bunch of times. We've played games together and eaten together. And the room we're in right now, I've been in a number of times and played games and eaten pizza. And it's been a joy. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you. Later, I think I want to hit on that little bit about how you called me out to be a man of noble character. And because I have my version of it, because I can't remember exactly everything you said. I remember how impactful it was to me.
Wow. But
I would like if you could, for the gentlemen that are kind of watching, because this program is designed to bring out the best in people. Because most people, like myself, I wandered through school. I wasn't led the proper way. I wasn't a troublemaker, but how can I say that? I didn't stand out. And I didn't know what questions to ask. I just kind of got through it. And then at the end, I know I can make my friends laugh once in a while, but other than that, I don't know what I'm good at. I have no idea. I can draw a little, but when I look at other artists, I'm not that great of a drawer. I just had a talent for art, and I appreciate it. I appreciate looking at things, the 3 dimensions and colorful stuff. But I left going, well, what am I going to do? So this program is designed to help people understand their strengths and really lean into them.
I think you're such a good. It's funny when I think about Ephesians 2:10. He says, "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which He prepared in advance for us to do." That when God looks at you, He's like, "Oh, Steve, oh man, I love that guy, and here's what I've put in him, and these things I've put in him have great purpose in the world." And to see that, when you're saying I was muddling around, right? The purpose of those things didn't even fully mature until you started to really know God and follow God. And then you're like, oh, wait, I have these kind of skills. I'm good at taking truth and assembling it and presenting it in such a way that it challenges others, right? Or I have a way of leaning in and being interested in people that draws them out so that I can help develop them into people of character. That stuff that God put in you, and God put that in, He made that, and He was like, this is my workmanship. He's like, oh man, Steve's my guy, and I'm going to use him in this purpose in this way. And as you surrender more and more to Jesus, all the gifts and talents and skills that you have get used for not just a purpose that serves you and makes you comfortable or even blesses your family, but blesses the world and is part of God's great purpose for the universe, for all of eternity. And I think you had a couple of moments that were really where you decided about who you wanted to be. I think you could have shrunk back. There's a little passage in Hebrews. We're doing Hebrews at church right now. He says, "We do not belong to those who shrink back, but to those who persevere." Right? And I think you had a couple of moments where maybe an outsider would have said, "Oh, he'll shrink back here," but you didn't. You chose to pay a price and persevere and grow. All growth hurts. Right, you have to kind of take a shot to grow. And
right.
I have a couple of moments in the course of my life where someone called me to be better, called me out to a better kind of life, to be a man who honors God, to be of greater integrity. And I won't say that I passed every one of those tests, but the ones that I stepped up to, I really grew. And it shaped my whole future, It was answering those kinds of challenges. And I think it's that's why it says, iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. You kind of need people who love you consistently enough, who've earned the right to kind of put out a challenge to you that is actually intended to grow you, not knock you down.
Right. Yeah. It's not calling out a fault. It's, I like to think I'm wearing armor, as it says in the Bible. And if something can get through, that I feel like, oh, that's a known weakness. Well, let me put another piece of armor there. Let me grow in that, whatever that might be. Hey, you're not being very integritous.
Yeah.
Right? I've seen some actions that are unbecoming. I've been called out about, you've called me out on a few things. One of my best friends, Dr. Danny, has said that, and he's only done. I've known him maybe 12 years or something like that, and he's maybe done it 3 times. But he's like,
does Dr. Danny make you call him Dr. Danny, or you just call him Dr. Danny?
He earned the title. It's like you, Pastor Gary. it's what you do. No one has to call me photographer.
So if I met Danny, would I have to call him Dr. Danny?
You can do whatever you'd like.
Because if he was my wife has an uncle who I was like, hey, Clarence, he's like, doctor, and I was like, fine, but now you have to call me Reverend.
Well, right? It's a title.
I'm like, no, please don't.
Yeah. Anyway, he called me out one time and just said, "Hey, those actions are unbecoming."
Ooh.
So it's like, he's a fellow warrior.
Yeah.
Like
well, we're at war, right?
Right.
We're the offense. Like we are the people carrying out the mission. And so there is a defensive part of that, of the armor wearing, but there's also like, we're going into dangerous places.
Yeah.
We're not afraid of hard things or hard situations or difficult people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, you recommended a book to me. It was a man, something about barbarian. I can't think of the title now.
Oh, The Barbarian's Way.
Yes,
that's old
So
school.
I'm reading that right now. And
Man, when did I recommend that to you?
2 years ago.
2 years.
I'm a slow reader.
I'm on page 9.
But anyway, talks about,
I'm still reading the introduction, just trying to really get it down.
But you talked about the halo, the high altitude, low. That's where you pop the parachute, so you're super high above the radar, and then you drop, and then right before you die, basically you pull the parachute. So low altitude. No, I don't remember. Low. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that's like the whole thing, and it says And by the way, if you survive that, and then it's just enough so you don't kill yourself. Like you're close enough to the ground that the chute can do its thing. You slow down just enough so when you land. So then you can now fight. It's like there's right. So there's a lot of that. We're in a war. Like,
that's cool.
Right.
I find know
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're going to risk your life and then you're going to fight.
Well, and you're going to get in something. I was talking with someone about this today, about something is going to capture your heart and your attention. Right. I gave blood this morning, and I always give blood because my son's life was saved by a blood transfusion when he was a baby. Oh. And so every time they ask me, I say yes. I'm like, that's the deal I have. Right. Yeah. My kid even though he's 18, the pain in my rear right now. No, I love that kid, but I always say yes. So I go today, and I like to know the people. Right. So I'm talking to the guy who's taking my blood, and I'd overheard a conversation. He was talking about different kinds of colognes, and I was like, oh, are you like into scents? And he's like, yeah. And it turned out he was really passionate about like colognes and perfumes and where they come from and the houses and the oils. And he knew all this stuff. And it was kind of fascinating. And I was like, oh, tell me more about this. And I'm learning it, whatever. And I had this thought. I was like, this guy has a real brain, right, for sort of understanding how these different things work together. And he's using it for perfume. Mm. And I'm like, I bet you that there is a kingdom purpose that this guy's strengths, if he was to belong to the Lord, that those kind of strengths would come to play, like where he could see people, right? And how they're gifted and how they work together. Like that's the kind of, but he's been captured by some, I'm not saying being involved in colognes and perfumes is bad. Is it the thing you want to put on your gravestone? That guy knew a lot about how to smell good, like, because our hearts can get captured by so many lesser things. And it happens. I mean, there's times that happens to me all the time where I'm like, why am I wrapped up in this lesser thing? Instead of being about something that really matters, like about something great, something eternal, something kingdom worthy. Yeah. Yeah. And that's my fear of my life, is that I will waste too much of it on things that are not worthy, right? There's in the passage in Hebrews, we're going to do that. I was working on my sermon earlier today, and it talks about all these people who had been faithful to God, and it tells all these stories about what they sacrificed and what they did. And one of the lines in there, it's like Hebrews 11:29 is, the world was not worthy of them. Mm. Like they were living for greater purpose, and the things the world cared about, the world didn't get them. They didn't get them at all. They were like, these guys were playing a different game. They're like, well, why aren't you chasing money? Why aren't you chasing power? Why aren't you chasing comfort? They're like, we're doing something more important here. The world's not going to understand us. It's like the world isn't even worthy of those people. Like they're playing a different game. They're on a different level. They're the Steve Nielsens of the world.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Is that true? Leave that in the comments.
If I've impacted your life in any way,
right. Feel free. I like to think I'm having a small impact on a little bit of on the pond that I live in. Yeah.
You be faithful of things that God calls you to, and then he says, faith like a mustard seed. You do your thing, and then watch God grow it. I got to have I had a great privilege today. I had lunch with a guy who was in my high school youth group, and he was when he was 15 years old. I made an investment in this kid, and he was in my youth group. He was in my guys' small group for 3 years. And as I was talking, he's the pastor of a church now. He's got 4 kids. His church has grown exponentially over the last couple years. It's a church of like 600 people now. They've grown from, and his job is helping train those people up in the gospel, like what it is to be followers of Jesus. And I got a chance to just tell him today. I was like, man, I'm so proud of you, the way you've raised your family, the way you've done here, the impact you're having. It's multiplied. And he goes, I always knew I could, if I brought someone to your house, that you'd make them feel welcome. And he goes, I always wanted a place where I could bring my friends, and I could always come to your house with my friends. And he goes, that's where I learned. And I'm like, and that little investment, like I fed that kid and his buddies, and I'm like, I probably wouldn't even remember his name. That was 23 years ago.
Wow.
And then to see, he's like, that little investment has blossomed into this guy, which is into other people. I'm like, I didn't do much, right? Mm-hmm. But God took it and grew it. Cool.
My gosh, that is fantastic. All right, what leads me to, so let's say 10 years before you became a Christian, that faithful night, okay? So think about, just that time period before that.
Okay.
And then up to like right now, the strengths that you had back then, are they still your strengths now? Meaning, I'd like to know what your 3 strengths are now, and were they similar back then?
That's a great question, Steve. Boy, that's a really hard question, because I think I became a Christian October 4th, 1991. 10 years before that was when my mother died. And a lot of what happened in my life because of that loss was that most of what I would say I'm good at now was kind of under wraps. I went down into a shell. I didn't know the Lord. My family didn't know the Lord. My dad was in a real broken place. I kind of retreated into, I still do, but I used to read a lot. And I remember I read the Lord of the Rings books through 9 times. I used to read them every year, and kind of the fantasy of that. And I was very quiet. I had just a couple of friends. I wouldn't be someone who like talked out loud to anyone. And so for years, I was kind of shut down. And then when I was in high school, I got a job waiting tables, and you had to talk to people. Mm-hmm. And I started, the best waiters read tables well. They know what tables want. They can connect with people. They know who wants to talk and who doesn't want to talk. They kind of organize the experience for people. And I think that started to blossom in my life. And I realized that's a strength, was the ability to like win people over, influence people. So if you've ever taken the Strengths Finder test, my primary strength on Strength Finder is what they call woo, winning others over. And so I started to discover that when I was a waiter. I mostly used it for evil purpose, to get my way in various and sundry things. And then the Lord used it in my life to win people, and to make contacts. And I would say I'm from like a Christian standpoint, the thing I'm most primarily gifted at is evangelism. So talking to people about Jesus and winning others over connects to that. So that would be one of my kind of primary strengths. I think in my job, I think teaching, that teaching or preaching, presenting information and God's truth in a way that is compelling and calls others to action. That's not something I really, I remember when I heard someone say that I had that gift. I'd never thought of that. Even though I led Bible studies and stuff in college, I got baptized at our church in Vernon Hills in 1996, and I had to give a testimony, and I wrote my testimony out and read it, and people responded to it. And I remember our senior pastor, who's since passed away, leaned over and he goes, "I think you have the gift of teaching." It was a very powerful moment. He's a guy who I really struggled with relationally for a long time. We ended well, but that he was sauce. He had that "I see in you" conversation with me. It's like, I see a gift of teaching in you. So that didn't really come out until later in my life. The ability with people started kind of surface with waiting tables. That teaching thing didn't really come out till a little later. And then as I practiced that and did that more, that was something that got developed. The other thing that I come out with on when I take tests is that I'm strategic. I'm kind of a strategic thinker. And that's something that's been true of me. Like, I love sports. I'm not the most athletically gifted guy. I don't know if people are seeing this or just hearing this, but I'm a big guy. I'm not fast. I'm kind of strong. I'm sort of coordinated. But the thing I'm best at usually at sports is the strategy of them. So if I'm playing basketball, I'm good at matchups, figuring out where the ball should go or how to get the right switches to get the right people in the right position. Or even like when I was a wrestler, I was like, what's my advantage in this matchup? This guy is better than me in 9 of the 10 things. Let me make this about the one thing. I have this joke about, I joke about fighting people that I say, I'll fight anyone as long as I can pick the venue.
Right.
And I'll say, I'll fight anyone in a half bathroom, and I'm like, in a half bath, it takes away the running around advantage. It takes away, and like I'm a big guy and in a small space, I'm tough to deal with. Right. And so I'm like, that's the strategic side of me saying, as long as I can pick the rules. Right. So when I play my sons in basketball, they're both way taller than me. I was like, I'll play you one-on-one, but I pick the rules and I'm going to pick the things that I'm good at. We're going to play to 5, not 12, because I'm going to get tired.
Yeah.
And we're going to play no 3-pointers because you're a better outside shooter than me. We're going to play make it, take it. And we're going to take free throws to see who goes first because I'm a better free throw shooter than you. And if I get the ball first, I may be able to back you down 5 times and shoot my little hook and steal the game from you, even though you're better than me, because I'm strategic. And I think of that. I use that in church, thinking about who we're hiring and what we're doing and trying to think about matchups. And that's been true of me as far as I can remember in game playing, in sports, and then, now running an organization, kind of thinking strategically. So does that make sense as an answer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I will just continue on. I have 14 more examples if you want me to keep talking, Steve. I'll go back and preach sermons to you if you want. I'm actually thinking about it right now because I'm in a tough situation and I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what to do. I can't explain it. It's too personal for now. But I was trying to figure out what my next step is, and I'm kind of sorting through my values. And I'm like, okay, let me figure out, okay, if this is what I need to get done here, who's the right person to have this conversation? What's the right step? Who do I want to make sure I have on my side? Who am I in agreement with? What's the higher value? What to protect here? And think that's what I've been doing the last day is kind of thinking through this hard situation and gathering some counsel, but making a strategy to approach this problem. And that's, even though it's a hard situation, I don't dislike the process. It's a little bit of like, all right, I can figure this out. Right. I can get through this.
Everyone has some sort of weakness.
Yeah.
That you can maybe farm out. That's a term I use. Like,
yes.
hire it out. I'm not good at that thing. I need someone that is, and then because they're not good at talking, right? So is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's something I think about a lot with hiring in our structure. So if I'm the lead, but the number 2 in our organization is our director of operations, Nikki Slavnik.
Yeah.
And if I'm culture, Nikki is systems. And so I'm always thinking about, does this feel like New Hope? And how does it feel to go here? And what are our big values? And Nikki is thinking about simple, clear systems that enact those values so that we don't have things fall through the cracks. I am not a good systems person. And I recognize that oftentimes I get in the way of systems. And so I have to hire people that I trust, that own our values, to put those systems in place, even though I'm the one who wants to buck the system. I tend to, if there's a system, I want to not have it apply to me because I want to feel special.
Yeah.
And so that didn't always go great in my life. I've been better over the last years hiring people that have system strengths and putting Nikki in that place of authority in our church. She runs our staff. I don't run our staff. I try to encourage our staff. I meet with our staff. I do vision casting and brainstorming, but I don't set up anybody's system. And like we're running a mission trip this summer in conjunction with a couple of our churches. We're going to Mexico. I run the meetings. Like you were at the meetings, but I'm not in charge of the system. Nikki is project managing that. She's keeping all the information. She's setting the dates. She's tracking all the little pieces that we need, all that. She needs direction and vision from me, but she's going to carry out the systems. So that's certainly something. And then I have some weaknesses that I would just say are sinful. That I'm a people pleaser. I can tend to want to please people more than I want to please God. and I've gotten in trouble with that. I'm a corner cutter. I'll kind of say something's true, or like an apple polisher when it's not quite true yet, but it's going to be true, right? I can kind of be, and I think that can hurt people's ability to trust me in certain situations. I used to wait tables, and I waited tables for 15 years. And my wife would say, "What'd you make tonight?" If I made 175, I always said I made 185. It was always a little bit better. Like I could never, it doesn't matter what the number was, a little bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit better, right? And that, you got to be careful about that, especially in ministry. And there are times when precision matters. It doesn't always matter. When I'm telling a story, I tell stories in church all the time. It doesn't matter if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, or how much the hot dog cost or whatever. But if I'm telling something that has a specificity to it, like how much we owe on our mortgage, I should be right.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't try to fudge that to make it look a little bit better. So I think there's a sinful, people-pleasing, corner-cutting side of me. And like everybody else, I can fall in love with comfort. I can want to get my way. I can be defensive instead of receiving constructive criticism from people. I think sometimes people, my first response to someone be like, "Hey, how come we haven't done this or this?" My response can be like, "Why don't you plant a church? Yeah, why don't you try it?" Right. Maybe when you're in charge, you can do it your way. Like I may not say that, but there can be a part of my heart that kind of gets to that quickly. So I have to train myself to not respond that way and let the Lord work on me and those kind of things. Do you want more weaknesses? I could go on for quite a while if you want. Yeah, I got more stuff.
Well, because I
got loose lips.
Okay.
I sometimes choose funny over kind, and that's gotten me in trouble. I've and I'm easily distractible. One time, my wife told me, she goes, you should never improv when you're preaching because 90% of the time it's funny, but 10% of the time it's creepy and it's not worth it. And she goes, you just get distracted and you file. And I'm like, I don't do that. And then one time I was listening, I had her iPod. This is back in the day. And I was out for like a walk and I was listening to something else and it ended. And the next thing that cued was a sermon of my own, which I don't usually listen to. And in that sermon, I was trying to say destructive habits, but instead I said destructive hobbits. And then I went on a whole riff for like 3 minutes about Frodo and Sam. I'm like, "Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee." And I lost my point. There was like this point where God had decided we could have a moment. And instead I just did impressions and talked about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I should listen to my wife, maybe a little bit more. So easily distracted, loving comfort, pleasing people, cutting corners.
Yeah.
Sometimes lazy.
And
I can be a little bit. I can play
still
favorites.
Successful. In some ways.
The Lord has used me. We do. I work with our pastors as part of my job with our conference. I work for our conference as the church strengthening director for Chicagoland. And one of the gifts of that is you see all these other churches, and I come back to New Hope very thankful. We live, and we've impacted a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of great people there, and we're financially healthy, and we've stayed on mission, and have had, we've had our share of, every church has hard stuff. It's what you're in the hard stuff business.
Yeah.
But nothing that's really broken our unity. And we've had pretty consistent leadership over the time, and that makes a big difference. So.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned values that you want to keep New Hope true to the values. That's one of our modules that we talk about, and I think it's one of the more favorite modules that people like going through because everyone has them and no one defines it. You know? And once you start walking down that path, I have my current class that I'm running through right now. JK, who you're familiar with.
Yeah, did his wedding.
Yeah, right. For 2 to 3 weeks. For 2 weeks when I met him after we talked about values, he's like, I've thought about that module every single day for 2 weeks.
Wow.
He's thought about ways to improve it. Like he's combining, he's doing all kinds of stuff because he's got that doctor mind, a little bit. He sees a little bit of chaos and can put it into form, like a system, so to speak, right? So he's really touched by that because he'd never been asked that before, and he's successful in his own right. Went to school, he got a doctorate. And he still didn't fully grasp it. So I think that's fine. I find that fascinating, and that's why I like talking about it. So I know the church has them. Was that when you did you ever formally think of what the church values, or is it just something like we know we value this?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I've just been working on this recently. when we got started, when you plant a church in our conference, you have to put together like a vision document. Here's why we exist. Now, our original mission statement was New Hope exists to bring the blessings of bring the blessings of Christ's kingdom to those around us. And then we have this list of values. And then you have a real church. Mm-hmm. And those values that you put on the paper that you're like, this is what we're going to be about, isn't always what actually happens. It's like having a plan for your kid, like, oh, my kid's going to be a great soccer player. And then you're like, oh, actually they're slow and uncoordinated, but boy, can they sing, And that kind of happened at New Hope, where I was like, oh, we're going to be this and we're going to be that. And then and a church is a cooperative thing. It's run by Jesus, but God brings people there. Mm-hmm. And whoever's called to that place helps shape that place. And some people stay for a long time. Some people stay for a short time. And so we get into leadership. And then you kind of have this culture that develops. And so we're just talking about this because I feel like there's things we say around New Hope that are like, this is who we are. And so I've been trying to say, what if we were to codify those things? Do you know how the process of the canon worked in Scripture? Mm-mm. So the canon is the books that are included in the Bible. But before that happened, which happened in like the 300s, there were other books, right? And people were claiming, oh, this should be the gospel about Jesus, and this should be a book that we revere. But there were the core books were the ones they'd been using for 300 years that the churches kind of acknowledged. And before it got too out of hand, they had a big meeting called the Council of Nicaea. At the Council of Nicaea, the leaders of the church got together and said, let's recognize the books that we all use and believe to be the books. The ones that we've had from the beginning, that we know the author, and that's where we get the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, and Acts, and Romans, that's all came together from that Council of Nicaea. So in my head, I'm like, we kind of need to do that as New Hope. Even though we're not 300 years old, we're 15 years old. Say the things that we say around New Hope that are like our values. Like, what if we took those sayings and the scripture that goes with them and put them into like a set of values? So I actually, just last week, I went away for myself. I went away for a day and was a meeting with God. And we had made a list in our staff meeting of the things we say at New Hope. They're probably things you're familiar with because you've been around. We say things like, this is not our home.
Well, yes.
We say things like, we are the offense. Mm-hmm. We say things like people over business, or eat when the food is hot. Like these are things that we say. As a church, we call ourselves the Island of Misfit Toys. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of got together. It's funny, and I wrote down some values that I was like, what if it was these things? And I worked on them for a day, and I just gave them back to a little team we have at church to go, what do you guys think of these as represent, if we were to canonize our values, now that team is kind of working on that and cleaning that up. But do you want to hear them?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. It's going to take me a second.
Studio audience, would you like to hear?
Studio audience. Now this is an exclusive, Steve, and I don't even know if this will make it out to the congregation. But this is what I was working on last week. So they ended up with all C's. So I put it's connected, commissioned, compassionate, and courageous. So connected to Jesus and others, commissioned by Jesus. We have a purpose to show and tell others about Jesus. Compassionate because of Jesus. Everyone has a story, and we seek to understand each other and receive each person. And courageous with Jesus. Culture matters here. We are not afraid of hard things and difficult problems, tough people. So that little foursome, connected, commissioned, compassionate, and courageous. If we were to pick those four, we'd say these are our values, and that everything we would do would come underneath there. And then behind those, I have all these things we say, these little phrases at New Hope, and scripture at New Hope that comes behind those four things. Right. So that's what we're trying right now. You're supposed to be really impressed right now.
No, I am.
Gary,
but I'm trying to think.
That has changed everything for me.
The fact that you're really thinking this through, because then you can have your staff meetings and say, this is who we are. What's going against that? Chris Metzger, whom we all know and love.
Married to my daughter.
Yes. He cranked
About
up.
to have surgery tomorrow.
I know. Missioned out. But anyway, we had long meetings about like what the values for the youth group was.
Yeah.
And he took it, when he had taken over, I think it's just a number that we like to have. In my own mind, there was like 6 kids that first week.
Yeah.
And then the last week, which was last Wednesday, it was, I don't think it was the record, but it was really close to the record. I think it was the second, 48.
Man.
right?
Faithfulness.
Because he
He's been
taught
clear
us.
vision and recruited a good team of leaders. I think kids love consistency, and Chris and your guys' whole team has showed up for kids, and there's a hunger to grow for young people. He came at a low point. There was a time when we've had a couple different seasons of youth ministry, but we kind of hit a spot where we lost a leader suddenly, and then kind of had some interim play and lost a lot of the youth ministries. Churches in general can run on momentum. Mm-hmm. And we kind of lost a lot of momentum and not knowing who was going to be in charge, and that they were really invested in the kids. And then seeing Chris come along and really, I think I filled in for Chris a month ago.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing the way your team prayed together, the way you were organized in the night. And we went out afterward and had a slice of pizza, and to watch the way you guys broke down the night, and does it fit into who we are, and then the way you prayed together, and even the fellowship time of like, it's a special. There's something about saying it's a special thing to be a Connect leader. Like it takes a special kind of person. It has a special value in the kingdom. It is worth sacrificing for. I think Chris has modeled that really well, and in the way that he lives, but also the kinds of leaders that have attached themselves to that ministry. It's been really beautiful. Yeah. And I no longer have a kid in that ministry. They just graduated out, but I benefited from that. The last 2 years my son had were under Chris, which was wonderful. So.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think one of my favorite things about there's a lot of things I really like really, really like. But I think my favorite thing is the worship. Watching these young, cool kids, like they're fun to hang out with. And, there's such a mix of like athletes to artists and everything in between. And they're all just worshiping. I like literally hear them singing, and like, there's no shame. It
is hard to get youth to worship. I've been a youth pastor before, and I've had 5 different seasons of it in my life where I ran the youth ministry for a while. And getting to a place of enthusiastic, consistent worship, you have to go through the hard times to get there. And I remember when Chris first took over, and that ended up being a thing. We're like, we're going to worship. And because it's right for our kids, and the unity it provides and the way it connects them to the Lord, like they were willing to pay the price to say, we'll get through the weird. Mm-hmm. To get to this payoff of we're a worshiping group, that we're going to stay focused on the Lord, because youth groups can devolve into, hey, we just play games, or, let's throw pies at each other or whatever. Mm-hmm. So.
Or joust with pianos. I mean, doesn't that sound ridiculous? Jousting with pianos.
Keith, I'm just going to address you because Steve's just calling me out, because when I was a youth pastor, we once did a jousting with pianos event, which was for the Lord.
For the Lord. Oh my gosh.
I did so many stupid things as a youth pastor. It's hard for me it helps me not criticize our staff now, because I try stuff. I was like, let's try this. Yeah. And dangerous things, meetings with parents when they would yell at me about stuff. And that is part of ministry, is that you'll receive a lot of criticism. It is also apparently part of ministry that you'll try a lot of stupid things, because you're desperate to connect with kids, and you want to see kids want to be there.
Yeah.
And kids are fickle. Youth is a fickle culture, right? And so sometimes you can get lost into the, what if I'm more entertaining, or if it's, if I can try to do something bigger or splashier or whatever. When I became a youth pastor accidentally. Mm-hmm. I was serving at the church. I wasn't on staff. It's my old church. And 2 young gals who were juniors in high school said, "Are you going to be the youth pastor?" And I said, "No." And they're like, "Come on," which is a very effective way to get me to do something. And I was like, "I don't want to do this." And they're like, "What if," I said, "We don't have any kids here." They're like, what if we got some kids?" And I'm like, "How are you going to do that?" I'm like, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you one chance. If you can get 30 kids to come, this is a new church. We were like a month old. And I said, if you can get 30 kids, high schoolers, no junior high, just high schoolers, I'll do it. And those 2 girls worked the room and threw a picnic, a barbecue thing, and 40 kids showed up. And I ended up with a youth ministry with 40 high school students. I was a volunteer, and I'm like, I guess I'm the youth pastor. And I was used to college ministry. We didn't play games and stuff. And so they would drag me to like do fun stuff, I finally like got into stuff because I'm like, let's do Bible study, let's do evangelism, let's do, and which they did.
Yeah.
I'm the heart and soul of that thing was small group.
Yeah.
We had our gathering, but each week I had me and another male leader each had a group of 10 boys that would come to our houses for dinner once a week and do Bible study. And that was my, yes, I cared about the gather on Monday nights. Wednesday night Bible study at my house was where it was at. I was like, these are my people. And my other leader did it as well. And then I had a female leader that did that as well. And that was really the heart of that thing when I ran it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get dragged into I'd never grown up in youth ministry.
Yeah.
So they would do all these things that they thought were like, this is what youth ministry does. I had little kids. They came to my house and TP'd my house and forked my lawn. They put 1,000 plastic forks in my lawn. And then they did like a bunch of stuff on my patio with like pumpkins and whatever. And I lived in a townhouse, and my drunk neighbor at like 3 a.m. saw this and knocked on my door and woke me up.
Yeah.
And was like, your house was attacked, which is probably the reason I was so annoyed. I do not like pranks. I don't like jokes like that. I was like, what happened here? And I figured out all those girls, they were all girls, were having a sleepover. And I called that house and reamed them out and made them come over and clean up my yard.
Oh, no. Do you regret that decision at this point? No.
I mean, I wish I'd been more calm. I mean, I was taking them to a water park that day. I was going to take like 50 kids to a water park that day on a Saturday and leave my wife alone with our 2 small children. And I worked another job also. So I was like taking the day off my other job to go do this thing. And I'm like, these kids don't appreciate this. They don't understand the sacrifices that I'm making. And they're waking us up in the middle of the night and we've got little kids. That's not what they didn't plan on that.
Right.
They thought this is fun youth group stuff. Like we like Gary, let's go give him a hard time. And I didn't curse at them or anything. They never did that again. And I think I did 5 of those girls' weddings. So it's all right.
Yeah, right.
It's okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so
Could have been nicer.
right.
Yeah.
This next question I've really thought about, and I really want to know the answer because I'm curious as what you're going to say. Your sphere of influence, your current sphere of influence, your closest people, who's in it?
Wow. That's a great question, Steve. Who's in my current, like, who do I have influence over?
No, like who
speaks into my life?
Yes, more like that.
I mean, I'd say the people whose opinions matter to me the most, I could probably count on one hand.
Okay.
My wife is number one. Our elders, especially when it comes to church matters. My father-in-law. I have a couple of friends that I trust, mostly, but in specific areas.
Sure.
So, yeah, I have a couple of friends. So I have other people that I'll go to for specific things and people who I care about what they think, but like the real big value people, that's about it. My wife, the elders, a couple of friends, my father-in-law. That's about it.
Yeah, because we talk about the importance of having one. Obviously, you would agree. You
probably
should have
my
a really good sphere.
old boss. Although less so now than it used to be. My old boss and I were really close. He was a mentor in my life. Still someone that I look up to, but I don't have as much. He doesn't have as much influence in my life now. There is a guy that I've sought out for coaching. I coach him and he coaches me back. Especially for church stuff, he's someone that I would go to. And, as my kids have gotten older, I would say my own children on some things, where I respect, because they know me so well and I know they're for me. So I'd say as they're getting older, they have a little more influence as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some authors and stuff. There's some people who meant stuff to me, but I don't know them personally. But like whose values I tend to trust. There's a guy named Richard Foster who I've never met, who wrote a book that really moved me called Celebration of Discipline, which is about the spiritual disciplines. And things he said, things I read in that book have rung through my head for years and years. So I think he has influence on me. I don't listen to a lot of other preachers because I think it messes with you if you're a preacher to hear other people preach a lot. I tend to read more. I'll read stuff and I'll get in the scripture for myself. But yeah, there's people in our movement that I respect. I probably, one of my weaknesses is I probably keep too close to counsel. Like I tend to trust my own process. And my wife is, when I say my wife, she's number one by a lot. I trust Elizabeth. Yeah. Like I trust her walk with God. She's probably the smartest person that I know, most consistent character, most honest person I think I know. And she understands my world. Yeah. And she's for me. Yeah. There's a few things that I think she doesn't really get that I wouldn't talk to her about, but most of everything I'd say her.
Like joke writing?
She is funny, but not as funny as I am. And what she finds funny is not what other people find funny. I have to work out of a very special bag for Elizabeth. She's heard all my stuff.
Right.
And so if you want to make Liz laugh, you got to play a certain kind of game. I'll go there.
Yeah.
And it's a long haul game. I mean, you got to put the effort in.
Yeah.
You know, and she got real giggly yesterday. But also, if she's in the middle of a project or she's a task-focused person, always working a list, and it's just not worth it when she's on the list. If you can get her in some free time, that's different. But she is constantly making, our joke is she makes slow, steady progress. That is her favorite compliment. Liz, you're making slow, steady progress. And she'll go, yep.
That's fantastic.
That's who she is. Yeah.
I love it. Simple answer. How much is building a church just like building a business?
I mean, I've built a business and a church, although the church was a much bigger endeavor. There's a lot of entrepreneurial crossover. I mean, no one cares as much as you do, right? So when you're building a church, there's a lot of, I would say when you begin a church, you have tons of agency and no resources. And then if it goes well, you can end up with a lot of resources, but no agency because you build in with other people. Like if you go into an existing situation, you may have resources, but no agency. If you plant a church, same way with a business, and it goes well, you can get into a place where you have both agency and resources, which is kind of the season we're in now, which is kind of fun. Like we can do stuff that we want to do, and we're still able to do it because the guy who comes after me will not have the level of agency that I do because I'm the church planter. Right. But lots of personal sacrifice. I mean, there's stories I've told before about how when we were going through our building, we bought a building when we were 18 months old without any money. And when we had to get work done on that building, the church could not get any credit. And so I at one point had $35,000 in church debt on my personal credit card. That is not something you're supposed to do. But I imagine that every entrepreneur who started a business will tell you a story where they got strung out financially, right? There were days that I was cleaning graffiti off of a rented house because we were running a program there because no one else cares but you, right? And you've got to be creative. You have to give up the original dream to chase the actual reality. Churches are a little different in the fact that like you don't really benefit financially if it goes well. I mean, I have a job. I have a steady job. It's nice. But it's not like we're going to cash out at some point. But yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover. And then, I mean, I built a small window cleaning business, and that was part of what helped me when I started building. You do everything. You have to figure out how the legal side of it works, and how to become a nonprofit is a weird little process. And we had some help, and we had some models, but you had to go interview people and be like, hey, how do I do this? Hey, who can I talk to? Who can I get in front of? Who can teach me something?
3 more questions, simple ones.
Sure.
When you write a book, what will you title it, and what will be the content?
So I've had 2 thoughts about writing a book that will both never happen, and I'll tell you why. So I'd love to write a book called Stories I Couldn't Tell in Church. I like the here's how this actually happens stories. So there's ways that churches will tell stories about things. Hey, here's what happened, this moved and that moved, and then you're like, but what really happened? And I've been behind the scenes at enough places to go, like my old church, we did this big church cooperative project, And at the celebration, it was like, these 10 churches worked together and shared equally in this thing. The truth was that one of those churches paid 95% of the expenses and provided 80% of the volunteers and captained the whole thing and then decided to share credit. Like, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's all these wackadoodle things that happen at churches. All the crazy people that come across, people come into your circle and want to be the most important thing in the world to you, and then they're gone. Or the kinds of things that people say to you in counseling. I mean, I could write a book called Pastor, Can I Ask You Something? And then, or can I talk to you for a minute? And then all the insane stuff people say, which I cannot repeat on this podcast because you might be able to pick out people. And I can never write that book because I respect those people's privacy. But it's hysterical and sad and beautiful. And I mean, I tell a lot of stories, and the other one, at one point, I do a lot of premarital counseling and marriages. And I put together my own premarital stuff over the years, over the last 25 years. And my old associate was like, you should make that into a real curriculum and write the book. And I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea because I know how to do it and I have some stuff, but no one else could use my notes to do it.
Right.
And I sat down on sabbatical 7 years ago and spent half an hour trying to write. And I was like, I don't care enough to do this.
Oh,
and
right.
I can write to speak, but writing to like have editing, I don't want to edit.
Yeah.
I don't want other people to look at it and tell me what's wrong. I'm like, I write, I speak it on Sunday, I move on. Like, that's what I'm good at. So I will not write a book. I tried, and I'm like, nope, not going to happen. I might write like a book of short stories that's unconnected to church life. I love to read. I'm a big, I love fantasy and sci-fi. I've had a couple ideas of short stories that I thought would be fun. Maybe someday that.
Yeah.
And that would be called...
Where's Wayne the Rock Johnson?
And you know that man today. It's Wayne the Rock Johnson.
Okay. Do you consider yourself a leader?
Yeah. People are following me, so yes.
Yes. What attributes are best in your field?
In a pastoral field?
Sure.
A commitment and dedication to God, authentic relationship with God, the ability to hear from God and do what he says, obedience, faithfulness. You can get this job done lots of ways. There are people who are creative and people who are funny and people who are strategic and people who can build great systems. But the one thing that matters is faithfulness. It's people who don't quit. If you can find someone who loves the Lord and loves people and won't quit, they can make a difference. So being sure of your call, like here's the thing God called me to do, and then sticking to it, that works. And then you don't make the two big mistakes, right?
Which are?
Protect your marriage and don't steal money.
Yeah.
Those that I one time read a book called Church Building Landmines by Gary Ricci. Fascinating book. You'd probably love it. He said, here's the 3 reasons why churches fail. And I was like, oh, this is going to be about lack of vision and poor preaching. And he goes, here's why they fail. Number 1, pastor quits. Number 2, pastor has an affair. Number 3, pastor steals money. He goes, that's 98% of church fails.
Oh.
And I remember reading that because I was before I planted, and I was like, man, I better make sure of my call so I don't quit. I better invest in my marriage so it doesn't fall apart. And I better take care of my finances so I'm not tempted to steal. And he told me, he said, every pastor will get tested about money in their ministry because God wants to know if you're a prophet or a prostitute. So good. And I've heard that in my head many times of like, God's finding out right now. You prophet or you prostitute? Are you going to agree with this guy that you disagree with because he writes a big check? Or are you going to say what I told you to say? Who's your provider? That rich guy or the God of the universe, right? I've heard that one a lot.
Oh, that's so good. That is
so good. Yeah.
All right. Closing comments, including calling out young people to be a man of noble character.
You got to be careful if you call somebody out that you have the level of relationship to do it. And you got to be willing to be called out yourself. Like, if you don't respect other leaders in your life, people aren't going to respect your leadership. There's like a principle there. And so if you're someone who can hear criticism and respond to it, then you're probably the kind of person who can say hard things to other people. If you can't take it when people say hard things to you, you probably have no business saying it to anyone else. And you got to check your heart, right? Of when you see something and you say something, I think it's got to be a vision cast to be the real you to someone, to be something better, not a you suck, right? I think about the moment you and I had. I was probably a little more threatening than I was vision call-y, but you took that and ran with it, and God did good things with it. Sometimes I'm part of my job is to protect our church. And sometimes I come with the staff a little fast, and I'm like, hey, don't screw with this. I will break you.
Right.
Like, don't make me embarrass you. I do this thing with couples, and you've done a lot of weddings. And I had a couple weddings get ruined by drunk groomsmen. And so now at every wedding, I say, you show up here drunk, not only will you not be in the wedding, everyone will know why you're not in the wedding. I will embarrass you. I said, don't you dare mess with your friend's day. You show up here sober. Now, once we get to the reception, you do what you want. You don't screw around in God's house. You don't mess with this day. You understand me? I do that. And all these like 23-year-old guys are like, okay, pastor. I'm like, I will call down fire from heaven. Steve, I love what you're doing with this podcast. I love the influence that you're having, and you're finding new ways to continue to influence people and ask them hard questions about values and vision and what kind of people we want to be. You're the kind of guy that I want to be. So I feel very encouraged by you, and I love the model that you're putting out there. You're doing a great job with this, and I'm glad to have gone one-on-one.
Thank you, brother. All right, and with that, leave some comments, share the videos. I don't know what to do with this kind of stuff. I'm not whatever you call it. I'm not a social media guy. Give it a thumbs up. Like and subscribe. Okay, I'm being coached.
Can I try a different ending?
Yeah, go ahead.
For you.
Yeah,
and be like, hey, thanks so much for joining us today, and in our talk about values and visions. Use your life to ignite someone else.
And with that ignotation, we're out. Thank you, Gary. We always clap.
That was so fun.